Welcome to the Doherty Water for Food podcast. Since 2010, the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute at the University of Nebraska has worked toward one goal, a food and water secure world. One in which global food security is ensured without compromising the use of water to meet other essential human and environmental needs. It's a daunting vision, but one that is vitally important. This podcast amplifies the voices of those making waves in this space. We hope you enjoy today's episode. Hello again, and thanks for joining us for this edition of the Doherty Water for Food podcast, where I am thrilled to introduce you to Amy Wu. She's an award-winning journalist, filmmaker, and also the creator of From Farm to Incubators, a multimedia platform that uses documentary, video, photography, and the written word to tell the stories of women leaders and innovators in ag tech. From Farms to Incubators has a mission of highlighting women in food, farming, and farm tech, especially women of color. It includes a documentary that's been screened at South by Southwest and a new book that was published earlier this year that profiles almost 30 women founders in ag tech. You can find that book on Amazon or at your local bookstore. And it's especially timely to have Amy on the podcast for this episode because she's also a featured speaker at this year's Water for Food Global Forum, where, along with two women ag tech entrepreneurs, she'll be discussing a new generation of startups led by women with a diversity of backgrounds and ethnicities who are providing novel perspectives and solutions to agriculture's problems with tech innovation. So, Amy, I'm really excited for this opportunity to sit down with you one-on-one and discuss this topic. So, first of all, let's just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what got you here and what really inspired you to tell the story of women in ag tech.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy, for that wonderful introduction. I'm really excited to be the featured speaker for the forthcoming Water for Food Global Forum, and really excited to talk a bit about From Farms to Incubators as well. So what inspired me to tell the story of women in ag tech is that I didn't see their stories told. I was a local reporter back in 2016, 2017, based out of the Salinas Valley in California, also known as the salad bowl of the world, a $9 billion ag industry there, with nearly 85% of the leafy greens we eat here, Cindy, in the U.S., produced out of the Salinas Valley. And I didn't visibly see, and then a lot of women leaders at the helm of agribusiness companies, farms. And then the more I dug, the more I saw that actually there at the time were not a lot. And at the same time, there was this small but growing sector called ag tech, which is the marriage of innovation and technology. The more I learned, it's really any innovation that's there to help growers grow more efficiently. So I said, I really want to amplify the voices of a new generation of women in what is still a male-dominated industry. And at the time, I didn't even know if there were women founders in the ag tech space. So it took a bit of digging on my end to see if they existed. And I learned that they are there. They, not a lot of them at the time, I felt in 2016, 2017, but it's just that their stories were not told. It was the untold story. So, I got a couple of grants, including from the International Women's Foundation and also the International Center for Journalists to do a series of written portraits and also a short documentary presenting a handful of women, who founded startups in the ag tech space. And that's what inspired me. I said that, women already play a huge role in the food system, often making the decisions at the head of the households when it comes to food preparation or shopping. So, and why shouldn't there be more women in the space? And secondly, why aren't their voices being amplified?
Well, why don't you share a couple of the observations that you've uncovered in your years of exploring women in the ag tech space?
Well, there's a number of observations that I've made, related to this. And I would say that number one, the women that I've talked to, and now it's been dozens upon dozens of dozens of women of stories that I've collected, but I would say that they all share a passion for tackling big impact issues. Many of them come from a background of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. A number of them worked, in the industries of agriculture previously, or in maybe ag bio. Some of them are large companies, but they all felt like their ideas really could stand on their own, and they had something to contribute, and they could help growers. So I think that passion, creativity, innovation, belief in what they're doing, and a contribution to the bigger picture of food systems are some of the commonalities among the women. Also, pure persistence. I think there's a couple of women, one that I can think of, Miku Jiha with AgShift, who left New York and moved herself and her whole family to California to launch the ag tech company. And she, drove like thousands and thousands of miles to different farms to get a better sense about what farmers are seeking, what they're looking for. And her technology at the time graded the quality of berries and fruits, with using artificial intelligence.
What are your thoughts on why there are so few women who are founders of ag tech innovations, and what do you think would take to change that?
Well, agriculture and technology, I think I'm going to focus first on agriculture. Is traditionally a male-dominated industry. I mean, even when it comes to farms being passed down from generation to generation, when it comes to the tech industry, the same as well, actually, in the sense that a lot of the big tech companies and even startups were launched by men. So part of it is just that has been the case. But what is changing is, I wouldn't say that there are so few now. Actually, over the course of from 2016 to now, there's been a growing number of young women, in particular in their 20s and 30s, who have decided to launch their own agri-food tech companies. I mean, like I mentioned, they might have grown up in this generation where there's been a push to actually bring more women into STEM and STEM-like careers. So I think that they bring a confidence, actually, that they do have something to offer. Not just confidence, it's proven, kind of innovations and talent that they have. So I think it is changing. But, there are still a good number of challenges, and I would call it in this industry the glass ceiling of actually attaining, like, for example, if a woman wants to start her own ag tech company, the challenge of attaining funding and capital. Traditionally for startups, a lot of that has come through venture capital companies and from investors in that space. So not only are they challenged by the sector, because ag tech itself is a sector that VCs and investors have not traditionally given money to, but also the fact that they are women in the space, and a lot of them don't have a background or a track record necessarily in farming themselves. There are not a lot of women still who are the heads of agribusiness companies. I'm talking about some of the big ones. I think the one that I can think of is maybe Beth Ford at Land O'Lakes, who's the CEO there. Not a lot of women sitting on boards of agribusiness type companies either. So what would it require to change that is it does require a paradigm shift, but that's where there are some changes, actually. There's been more accelerators, incubators, and programs that are providing training, resources, mentorship to women who want to get into the space. There are a number of newer venture capital companies and boutique investors who are specifically focused on searching for companies that are founded or co-founded by women in this space. I think that there might be some new funds that are specifically wanting to invest in women-founded ag tech companies. And I think investors see an opportunity. They see an opportunity on one hand that, yes, these are pretty cool innovations, and we can talk a bit more specifically about what kind of innovations, but at the same time, they also see an opportunity for companies and the investors themselves who really want to support women founded companies also. So I think that there is still not nearly enough investment and women in this space, but that is actually slowly changing.
Well, can you share a couple of examples with us of successes that you've seen, and especially young women getting involved in ag tech?
There's so many inspiring stories. It's actually hard to kind of give a few examples. I mean, there are like 30 in the book, and there were more that actually just couldn't make the book because there were so many. But I'll give a couple of examples, and maybe folks can dig into it themselves and see our documentary and read the book. But Ellie Sims, for example, is a young woman who founded the B Corps, and she was a student at the time in undergrad and saw a need for that almond growers, a huge industry. I think it's like a $6 billion industry out in California. Well, almonds require bees to pollinate the plants. So her technology actually grades the quality of beehives and gives that information to growers so that they know what the quality of the bees are, the beehives are, which makes a huge difference in pollinating the plants for almonds. And I like using her as an example because she doesn't come from a farming background, as so many of the women that I've talked to don't come from that background. And yet they have a passion for wanting to solve some big problems that growers have. Martha Montoya is another example. She founded Ag Tools, and she's based in California. And Martha, I love talking about Martha because she comes from a very different background. I think she worked as the librarian. She was an award-winning cartoonist. She grew up in Bogota, Colombia, the daughter of educators. So again, not in agriculture, but she fell into it, I think taking on a job in the ag industry so she could fund her passion of also cartooning. And she ended up falling in love with the ag industry. And her technology now is collecting like information from hundreds and hundreds of different themes and areas, everything from transportation policy to the weather, and delivering that very quickly and rapidly to farmers, and who can attain that information with the click of a button on their mobile phone. Updated information is so important on these different things, and it really determines farmers' growing plans and how they operate day to day. And she's been pretty successful actually in raising funds for her company, I was going to say. I mean, and it's persistence, as I call chutzpah. And there's, also Ponzi Tribavasvid, who's the CEO of Inari, very successful too. The company is actually really fascinating also in that it's focused on creating seeds that are more farmer friendly. What does farmer-friendly seed mean? It means seeds that maybe require less water, because there's a lot of regions that are facing a water shortage and drought, particularly in the West Coast, and also creating seeds that are more disease and pest resistant. So those are just a few examples of the many growing number of women working in the space, and also the women founding the companies as well.
As far as women being involved in ag tech, how has the pandemic changed things, or has it?
I think that it has changed things for the better. It's increased awareness and also created opportunity. So awareness and opportunity in the sense that the pandemic really brought the importance of access to food to the forefront of the general public. Maybe all of us have had some experience with a challenge related to accessing food, especially local fresh produce and so forth. So actually the ag tech companies that I've been following, founded by the women, they've gained more attention and interest from a lot of customers and investors. I'm talking about, Cindy, a broad brush, of course, but yeah, I would say the majority. And once the pandemic was recognized in March of 2020, I called a lot of these companies just to see if they were still around. I was curious to see because these are startups, I was wondering if what happened to them, and they were mostly telling me that they were getting more interest from customers and more interest from investors, and customers, because of just the way that things are having now to change with everything from social distancing to new guidelines and protocols. So innovation, robotics and automation definitely plays a role in that. And also I would say, yeah, the interest from investors, as I mentioned, also has increased in this space in general. I think like big companies, even I could just name a couple off the top of my head, but big tech companies, maybe like Amazon, Microsoft, and so forth, and IBM have already been investing in this space called agri-food tech, because they see that farms in general, I mean, I'm not just talking about in the US, but internationally, really need to, agriculture in general is becoming more mechanized, we'll put it that way, and technology is being applied more. So ag tech is no longer kind of a question of, will we have ag tech? Should we use it? It's not optional. It's becoming a necessity in the industry, actually.
Tell us some more about From Farms to Incubators and what impact you hope that might have on the next generation of ag tech entrepreneurs, and really what impacts it might have already had.
Yeah, that's a really wonderful question. So From Farms to Incubators started out as pure storytelling, because my background is as a journalist. I spent dozens upon dozens of years as a journalist, and storytelling is a powerful platform, and as I discovered, to amplify the voices of women in this space. But what it's become is I discovered that there really wasn't a community or a hub or a network for women working in agri-food tech, and also a place where farmers and investors and policymakers and just consumers could connect with them. So it's become a platform really to serve as a convener and connector for women in ag tech. And there's a mission, a greater mission now, of getting more women involved in ag tech and using the inspiring stories of the women, for example, in the book and in the movie, to draw more attention to that. So it's really trying to hit especially younger people and youth. I've held more than probably From Farms to Incubators, which has been led by myself, has held more than 200 events and screenings and talks. Whether it be film festivals, whether it be at conferences or events or meetings where the film is screened, where I make it a point to especially bring on one or two women as a guest so that they can talk about their journey, and not only their successes, obviously, but the challenges that they face and how they've met those challenges as well. And on the note of being a convener and connector, with that, I've also partnered with other women who have a similar passion to bring more women to be involved in ag tech. I mean, recently we put together a handful of us in the ag tech industry have come together to create a searchable directory of women working in the space. So if you know of any woman who works in agri-food tech, you easily submit their name and their information, or they can submit themselves through a really simple form. And, we take a look at it and vet it, and then it goes right on the directory, and it's an easy embeddable directory. And we're hoping to share that further out. So those are some examples of the bigger objective and where From Farms to Incubators is going. And of course, I down the road hope to get more, we hope to get more support, basically, in the form of encouragement and sponsorship, so we can continue to tell stories, whether that be through a documentary sequel or through a sequel for the book. Because there isn't a day that goes by that somebody's forwarding me some information saying, have you talked to this woman that has this company now and who's co-founded that company? And they're from all over the place. I mean, they're from the West Coast, Midwest, East Coast, internationally. So it's a pretty exciting time.
Well, as we said, you're going to be taking part in the Water for Food Global Forum. Tell us about your role there, what you're going to be doing.
Well, Cindy, I'm going to be part of one of the panels at the forum, and it's super, super exciting. I'm really honored to be a part of it. And I've actually brought along two women founders in ag tech. One of them being Fatma Kaplan, who's the founder and CEO of Pheronome. She's based out in Davis, California. And also she was in the book, and also Penny Nagel, who is the co-founder of PDMI, and also out on the West Coast. But their technologies certainly help farmers in different ways. I mean, Penny, I know, has they analyze soil and they use persistence data mining to do that. So, we're going to be discussing different questions and issues related to being, women in the space, but also more importantly, I think the innovation and the science behind their products, and also how is it contributing to farming overall, right? Like how is ag tech related to smart farming? So I'm really excited. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but I would say that we have a pretty robust panel going, and I'm really excited to be a part of that on October 14th.
What do you think women ag tech entrepreneurs might bring to the table that men might not? I mean, are there ways that women think differently than men, or perhaps have a different perspective?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think women definitely look at things from a different perspective. I mean, diversity of perspective, I think, is critical. I mean, a lot of reports and data have already shown that not just women, not just gender, but just your, background, person's background, whether it be cultural, can really add a lot to most businesses and their bottom line. But women have always played a significant role, I think, in agriculture, whether it be actually, most farms, the farmers make the decisions jointly with their wives, and yet they've always been alluded to as the farmer's wife. So the farmer's quote unquote wife has been the also contributing greatly to the farm, and also driving the tractor herself. But also internationally, I think women definitely are the majority that are contributing to the field work, and that's everything from harvesting, planting, selling food as well. And often, like I mentioned earlier, they're the decision makers in the household for food preparation. So there are women, actually a lot of women now working in agriculture, quote unquote, and the food systems, but still, I think their voices and their stories and their contributions have not yet been amplified. So I choose to focus specifically on their voices and stories, with the hope that the more that it's put out there, then younger women will consider being involved in the space called agri-food tech. And like I mentioned, there still are challenges within the industry. I mean, whether it be funding or just, I've had some women tell me at the board at the board table, or the big conference tables, when they have an idea, men still choose sometimes to turn to the other man and say, what's the idea? So, or versus asking her, what was your idea? So it's a bit of a, paradigm shift, I think, that's needed, but I think that's changing with having a new generation that's involved in this too.
A good point. And I know you mentioned possibly a sequel or something, but what do you see the next steps for your project?
Oh, I definitely see the next steps as creating the resources and tools to hopefully get more women involved in the space. I'm very excited about the agri-food tech space, and I really think that it provides a lot of job opportunities for people in general, and not just young people. I mean, people who are just passionate about food or agriculture. A new set of skills that will be needed to operate certain innovations that require like blockchain or artificial intelligence. But I'm also really excited about the fact that I think there are more young women that have shown interest in this area. A lot of them, like I mentioned, are coming from STEM. And yes, I would love to have a sequel for both the book and the documentary, because I strongly believe, like I said, that storytelling and presenting those are the best platform to create a discussion among people from all different backgrounds to come together to talk about what is the role of women in the food system and also in agriculture in the future, and what are the opportunities as well.
All right, Amy, that's all the specific questions I have. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, just very, very excited to be a part of, this year's forum. And really looking forward to having an engaging discussion with the other panelists as well. And please do check out, for Farms to Incubators website. And if there's interest in screening or documentary seeing it, please feel free to email me.
And once again, that website is farmstoincubators.com. To find out more about the Water for Food Global Forum, the website is waterforfood.nebraska.edu. The forum this year is a virtual series of events over the month of October with on-demand content and 2 hours of live content each week, as well as additional networking opportunities. And that's it for this, the 10th episode of the Doherty Water for Food podcast. Thanks for listening. Make sure to visit our website, waterforfood.nebraska.edu, to view show notes or subscribe so you don't miss future episodes.